I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the author of several books, no other than Mr. Theo Burnett.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Daniel, for having me on your show.
Welcome back, Mr. Burnett.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm excited.
It's my pleasure to have you. So let's talk about your second book of your Sapien trilogy, Days of Deception. Wow, sounds interesting.
Yes, and just like the first one, the book, the subtitle is indicative of the content that's inside the book. It's action packed from beginning to end, and the characters are holdovers from the first book as a series, and you just get more and more into them, and you become more in love with the crew of the Whisper.
Yes. So, according to Miss Aretha Thomas, it was reviewed in the United States October 9, 2019. George Lucas and Ava DuVernay had a baby. Tia Burnett would be their child. Wow.
That is an excellent compliment. Also, Aretha Thomas is a famous person. She's on Tyler Perry's Assisted Living, and Anastasia Devereaux, I think, is the name of her character, and she's gifted actress, and she's written over 13 books herself. So that's a whale of a compliment coming from her.
Of course. So, how does it feel?
It feels fantastic to have completed a series. You know, is something that I never dreamed of. I just started writing books in 2016, and I was more worried about the second book than any of the books in the trilogy because the second book is usually where, or the second iteration of anything is usually where there's a lull, and only in Empire Strikes Back, truly, and also Aliens from the Alien franchise, did they manage to pull off and one up the initial um, movie or book in a series. So I feel pretty good about it. I thought Days of Deception managed to do that, and it might be my favorite book in the series.
So, do you think 7 Days of Deception is the hardest, or that you have a difficulties of writing it?
Actually, I did not. I plotted it out very well. Um, of the three books, it took me the least amount of time to write that one. It took me 10 months to write Days of Deception, whereas it took me 14 months to write the first book, which was understandable. And it took me over 2 years to complete the third one, and that was simply because there was other circumstances involved in addition to me wanting to tie up all the loose ends in the book. But the Days of Deception brings in a lot of the elements from the first book. I was well prepared. I knew exactly what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go with the story, and where I wanted to end it. And it just played out in my mind like a movie. And so I was able to really just dig into it, get it out, and I was very happy with the product at the end.
So, your Sapien trilogy is totally planned.
Yes, yes, totally planned. Um, I knew what the end was going to be before I typed the first word.
So, how do you structure all those three books?
Well, from beginning to end, all of them follow the three act structure. I've figure out in the beginning who through whose eyes I primarily want to tell the story. In this book, is a main character named Muladi Sodat. Um, I try as much as possible to follow genre conventions, to follow plot beats for specific, say, the action genre, or whatever genre the book is going to fall into. I pretty much try to make sure that I meet those important scenes along the way so that the story is told. It makes it easier to tell the story. But the important thing was having a cutoff point saying at the end of the book, I want, for instance, at the Dawn of Oblivion, there was specific thing that had to happen because I wanted the readers to get closure and not be left on a cliffhanger. It had to be some type of satisfactory moment at the end for them. Same thing I did with Days of Deception, except for with Days of Deception, the stakes were higher. This time, It was a more monumental event that occurred at the end of the book, and that was intended was done with the intent to create uh, anticipation of the third book, and I think I did that.
Yes, interesting. So Miss Thomas says you create entirely a new worlds that we've never seen before. Where did you get those imagination?
That's an excellent question. The imagination, they say necessity is the mother of invention, and I don't know who was the author of that quote, but I like it. And what I wanted to do was the whole premise of my story is that it, that humans here are aliens, that we came from somewhere else, that we're not indigenous to Earth, right? With the Sapien solar system, I had to create a place that was conducive to life and would be structured in a way that suggests that we mimicked what was going on in that solar system here. So instead of continents there on one planet, they had each planet belonged to a different race of people, even one planet belonging to a planet of albino people.
So that's your imagination, how profound it is.
Yes, yes. It takes a lot of imagination to get that done. And the beautiful thing about sci fi and also fantasy is that you are governed by the rules that you create. The important thing to remember, however, is that once you establish those rules, you have to work within those confines. And so you can't, have the deus ex machina at the end of your story, you know, with something that doesn't just absolutely does not make sense. So from that standpoint, I was able to be free in my first book and did some things that allowed me to have a lot of freedom throughout the rest of the series.
So who influenced you those imagination?
I got to say George Lucas mostly. If I wanted to say who was the first, it would be him because of the Star Wars trilogy, the original Star Wars trilogy. I saw the way that it was structured. I saw the imagination that went into that, and I thought that it was something that could be replicated, if not in content and form. I didn't want to do the same things creatively that he was doing, but the structure in the way that he laid it out was perfect, and I thought that I would mimic that and even try to improve on some of the things because I think he left some things closed off because I don't think he imagined that Star Wars would be as big as Star Wars is. And so there were some things that he closed off that maybe he wishes he hadn't. So I went into the Sapien series with the mindset that everything, the possibilities are endless. I want to leave certain storylines open so I can go back and uh, um, further develop them and hash them out and explore them. And that would be dictated by demand of the readers.
So do you think Sapien is better than Star Wars when put in a movie motion picture?
Listen, I would never say that Sapien is better than Star Wars. Star Wars sets a high bar, but if it could be mentioned in the same breath as Star Wars, I would be ecstatic. I would be more than happy with that. Even if, and I think, well, and it was by the beautiful Miss Thomas, but you know, I would be blown away to be even compared in the slightest sense to Star Wars or Star Trek or Firefly or any of those fan Star Wars series.
Very well said, Mr. Burnett. And Miss Thomas says, your work bursts with heart, humanity, and empathy. How would you do that?
So you have to tap into. I'm a people watcher, and I'm a very empathetic person myself. So I am able to channel emotions and feelings. And the one thing that I have, the one rule that I have when it comes to characters, or one of the most important rules that I have when it comes to making a character, is that I establish their personality right away as soon as I make the character, and I also within that establish their intelligence level. So how that character reacts or responds depends on the other character that they're opposite at the time or who they're played against, the situations they're in, and the who else is in the room, whether the other person is smarter than them, dumber than them, or whatever. And that creates and all of those things, bravery, all that goes into play. And I established that in the beginning, and so I always stick to those when I have certain characters interact with one another or characters act impulsively and all that stuff, that primal urge, that primal reaction comes out of them and they react in a way that is consistent with the character I established.
Yes, one of the comments says this is a great follow up. How did you connect Sapien Dawn of Oblivion to Sapien Days of Deception?
The way what I used primarily to connect it, and I'm gonna for anybody who's gonna read Dawn of Oblivion, there's gonna be a spoiler here, so you might want to be aware of that. But in the climax of Dawn of Oblivion, there was a scene where they all had the battle at the hidden Bastille, and in that battle there was so much confusion, chaos, violence, and mayhem that some of the prisoners escaped. 8 of those prisoners then formed an alliance, and they roamed through the streets of Central City on planet Neutralia. After that, causing havoc between books 1 and 2. And at the opening of Days of Deception, we see the Bastillions in action, where they do a home invasion, and chaos ensues, and it's right in the opening pages. But that was the glue. So as a subplot through the second book, we are following the Bastillions, and they have become a problem for the politicians, and they have to catch them at the same time. They're still trying to capture and subdue the crew of the Whisper as they're on their mission to um, work to do what they have been hired to do by one of the politicians, Theris Lamont.
So I think that was Miss Thomas talking about that Joe dropping opening to the book. I think that's the scene where Miss Thomas talking about,
Oh
if I'm not
yes,
mistaken.
oh yeah.
Oh wow, that's so awesome. If this book will be a series or a movie, I can imagine if it's like a combination of Star Wars, Star Trek, and uh,
Firefly.
imagine that. Oh my goodness, it's a
Yeah,
blockbuster movie.
it would be a great movie, and if you combine all that and imagine that the main character, has the martial arts skill of Bruce Lee, not Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee, who came after Bruce Lee and who I thought was better. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash for that, but that guy was incredible. And so that's what, and he's a Wing Chun master, and he's sensational with his karate skills. He operates with he carries a weapon, an extendable, and that weapon, expandable staff called a Doha Nasada, and that translates from Slovakian to long stick. And what it is a staff. And so a staff, if you know anything about the Wing Chun martial arts discipline, is one of the main weapons. So he uses that to great effect, and that's his weapon of choice. And so if you can imagine all those things, except the captain of the ship of the main characters being a Wing Chun master, and just add all into the mix, and you just got something that's, I think, is incredible. I wrote the story that I wanted to read.
Yes, please, people, movie outfit out there. You prefer HBO, right? To be a
Listen,
series like
listen,
Game of Thrones. Oh, better than Game of Thrones. Come on, people.
that's right. Now, listen, I would, if they came to me with a movie deal, I wouldn't be upset. Let me put it that way. But if I had my, if I had my, if I had my way, I would much prefer that it was a HBO series or something like that, because I like for somebody to take their time with it and put it out there. But yeah, I would love to see it on the big screen. That would be amazing to me.
Yes. Miss Thomas said you painted the story vividly, colorful and vibrant pictures. How did you do that?
Well, so the beautiful thing about writing is that you can take the time. There's no time limit on it. There's nobody telling you you have to get it done by a certain time, especially as an indie author, which is what I am. So I have to take the time and take the picture that's in my mind and convey it as best as possible to the reader without, breaking any of the literary rules in the process. So it says, as when it comes to showing instead of telling, I want to show instead of telling. So, just the details that matter, the smells, the colors, the facial expressions, the interiority of the character that is the focus of the scene. And all of those things come together to make a picture in the reader's mind that deliver the scene in the tone that I wish it to be to wish it to be delivered in.
Yes. So, Sapien, Days of Deception. What do you think the flaws of the book?
What flaws do I think there are of the book?
Yes.
That's an amazing question and one that I hadn't pondered. I like I said, this book is my favorite one. I think the flaw is that it had to end. It was so good. I like, you know,
Do you think the story is enough that book to fulfill the characters that you want to invade to your readers?
oh, absolutely. I was able to go more in depth into certain personalities of the characters to show their capabilities, to show the strength of the crew as a unit, to show the politicians in their best and worst forms, and to double down on a lot of things, and also to show the Bastillions in a way because they were barely mentioned in the first book. They were actually is almost a probably the chapter before the denouement of the first book in which they were mentioned, and then they have a heavy focus on the second book, and so it's the second book more than the first is more character driven. It really digs deep into the psyches of some psychopaths, some very intelligent people, some sociopaths, and it's very entertaining.
Yes, definitely entertaining, Mr. Burnett. Do you think that Sapien Days of Deception can stand alone as a novel?
It actually could stand alone, and that was my whole purpose of writing them. If somebody happened to pick up one of the books mistakenly and happened to read them out of turn, the the hope is that they would still be entertained enough. There's I didn't, I mentioned just enough from the first book, from the first situation, that they can have enough context to kind of grasp what was going on in the second book without having read the first book. But I didn't want to retell the first book in the second book because that would have been like spinning your tires in mud and taking away from the action that was in the second book. But it picks up in a way. The opening scene is tremendous. It's so action packed and heartbreaking and everything that you get immersed in the story right away, and then it just takes you through a thrill ride through the rest of the book. You rejoin the crew of the Whisper, and all of the things come together, and it's just amazing.
I want to see that in the big screen. It's
I,
like phenomenal. Oh my goodness.
I hope you get your wishes.
I wish that the book of Mr. Burnett will be a series or a motion picture because it's better than Game of Thrones, I think.
Ah, well, that's a lofty expectation, but I'll take it. I will
Yes.
take it.
So one of your comments for your readers says, full of humanity. How did you give importance of humanity in the story?
Well, once again, going back to what we said, what I said about the establishing the personalities of the characters, I thought it was huge to when you're faced with a situation, objectively look at the capabilities of the character, and first of all, try to really know. You have to know what you want to do in a scene, and then push it toward that, and at the same time have a character react in a way that was plausible. So in those fiction, I believe a great deal in plausibility in everything that goes on. That people have to have human reactions and natural reactions. So that's the way I approached it each and every time with each scenario, each conflict, everything, every situation I put them in. I wanted them to adhere to their capabilities, their sensibilities, and do what was expected of them to do.
Yes, very well said. Before we go on, Mr. Burnett, I just want to shout out to the people listening in United Arab Emirates. Thank you so much. I'm 116 on Apple Podcasts. Canada at number 68, Estonia at 190, Ghana at 94.9, Cambodia at 98.7, Kazakhstan at 111.5, Lebanon at 41.1, Pakistan at 47.9, Trinidad and Tobago at 73.6, Tanzania, United Republic at 86.8, Uganda at 60.6. Thank you for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Burnett.
Yes.
What is the best highlight of Sapien Days of Deception?
Oh wow. The best highlight of Sapien Days of Deception would be the at the moment where the Bastilians, who are on the run for the entire book, for majority of the book, come face to face with the mayhem marauders, who are essentially the police officers of the story, who are the enforcers for the Supreme Council. And they finally meet up with them, and I won't give a spoiler, but it is explosive, it's exciting, and it takes you on a thrill ride from that moment all the way to the end of the book. And there are some really profound ramifications for Chancellor Stephen Aldrich, who is the Supreme Council leader, who's the leader of the Supreme Council.
Yes, and one of your readers says, full of suspense, mystery, and intrigue and adventure. So what's it's amazing book, people. You need to read Sapiens trilogy. Suspense. How did you put in the story?
With the suspense aspect, one thing I did do is there was an overarching story that continued throughout. That was the thread of all three books, and so that story hangs over the readers. Like the sword of Damocles, it's there all the time. And in the meantime, the backdrop of that, the tension is built through all of the other things, the subplots that are drawn to a conclusion in book one and book two that threaten to destroy what my main characters are trying to accomplish. So that is there every time. So that is built in suspense right there. And then it's situational suspense. I try to put my characters in situations that are precarious at best, you know, and have them do heroic things uh, that wow you, but at the same time make you think that they were in the capabilities of the people who were put in place to do them.
Sapien Days of Deception. Why is this your favorite book?
It's my favorite book because I went into this book knowing the importance of the second book of a trilogy, knowing the importance of a follow up book to a successful book, and I gave it my all. And it just so happened that in so doing, I made a book that I just completely fell in love with. And I like all three of my books. Obviously, they are all built around my sensibilities of things that I like. But this one, more than any of them, I realized the importance of having a sensational follow up story, and it did the job.
Very well said. If you have given a chance again to revise the book itself, would you do it and where?
Well, I've done it twice. So there,
Oh.
so
So,
so the answer is yes. So the first couple of iterations of the book, one had formatting issues, and they were, I was growing as a writer still, and even with both books. So I've revised the first and second one, because by the time I got to the third book, I was a much better writer. I had a better understanding of the craft, and there were some things in the book one and book two that I just, you know, in the words of Morpheus from the Matrix, they were like a splinter in my mind, and I just could not let those books live, knowing that those things were there. So I went back and pulled them from Amazon and revised them both and brought them up to the status or the so interesting. Some of the reviews of Days of Dawn of Oblivion that was somewhat critical of like the editing and stuff like that. So those reviews came before I had an opportunity to actually go back and revise them. So fix some of those issues. I listened to my reviewers, you know,
yes.
and I try to have a thick skin about what I'm seeing, and if something is supposed to be changed, then I change it. If not, if it's just a choice or something like that, then a preference, then and if I prefer what I did, then I'll leave it as such.
Yes. And one of your readers, a strong cast of characters, a solid storyline, and a quality writing. So, if you describe your writing in one word, what is it?
Oh, straightforward. Well, that's two words, isn't it? So I would say linear is a way that I would describe it. It's one continuous thing to the next. Everything happens in a way that you could see that is interconnected. You by reading the books, if you read the books, you can see that everything was plotted. There's nothing that happens by chance or nothing where I went off on a tangent because my imagination took me somewhere. You know, I just everything is carefully and meticulously plotted because I knew where I wanted to go. And if I went off on one of those tangents, it would possibly take the story in a direction that I did not want to go or was not prepared to, you know, get it back to the line that I had established.
Yes. Solid storyline. How did you do that?
Storyline. The important thing was I knew that I had to have a situation where, and based on the way I set up the world building, the different planets, and all that stuff, I knew that I had to have um, my characters perform a certain feat. Right. The important thing with that was making characters or creating characters who were capable of pulling off such a monumental and a huge feat, and the politician who recruited them had to be persuasive and enough to seduce them over to doing what he needed them to do and realizing all of the risks that were involved in doing so.
Very well said. So, people listening here on Book 101 Review, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, on the third season with Chef Alessandro. He's one of the executive chef in one of a five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Food 101 people, if want to know what is Italian cuisine or food trivia that you want to know, Food 101. So, Mr. Burnett, let's talk about independent publishing nowadays. What are the benefits for all the writers out there?
Well, one of the biggest benefits is that you first of all, there's no one that is taken away from your money. Number two, and the thing that I like about it is most is you don't have to answer to anybody. Now, that's a double-edged sword in that you don't have to answer to anybody, but there's also no checks and balances. So you have to make sure that you do your due diligence when it comes to editing, when it comes to all the formatting and all the other things that would allow you to produce a palatable product. So it requires that you do a little more work on your end, all of the marketing. And the marketing is a wash because the mistake that people have is they think that once they get a publishing deal that the publishing company is going to the publishers are going to do all the marketing for them. No, traditionally published authors still have to market their own work. So from that standpoint, if we're going to do the same amount of work but you're going to receive less money, I re- you know I'd rather go indie than traditional pub, especially if you're going to have some work that's transcended. If you're just plying your trade and you're a mediocre writer or something like that, maybe they can bump you up a little bit and make your work look a little bit better than it would have. But the difference in what you would receive monetarily would be negligible, I believe.
Yes. So, what do you think the major cons of indie publishing?
The major cons of indie publishing is you don't get to get all of the awards that go along with being writing in your genre. You may not have access to bookstores that you want, and so that's a major downfall of being indie published. But if you manage to break through and write something that's, as I said, transcendent, then people will look for your work. Good writing, I think, wins the day. I think if you write something good, enough people will. It may take longer for the buzz to get around, but eventually, 50 Shades of Grey, the author who did that was an indie author to that. So,
Phenomenal.
yes.
I want Sapien to be like that, Mr. Burnett. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that would be fantastic. I would love it. I
That'd
would
be
love it.
awesome. Yes. So please let's make Sapien into series or a movie, uh, motion picture.
Yes, come on, people. Let's do it. Let's give it. Get behind Sapien, Dawn of
Yeah,
Oblivion, Days of Deception, and then there was darkness. Let's do it.
that'd be awesome. So, what is your advice for those writer out there that they want to be do independent in publishing?
Do your homework. Listen to podcasts. There are several podcasts out there that give you all the answers as far as writing goes. Just look them up. You know, get out there and uh, read the genre in which you wish to write. Read all the bestsellers. Look at the expectations of the readers. Um, Go to reviews. Read reviews. I This is the best piece of advice I can give you right now. Go find the most popular books that you can find, or any books, and read all of the one-star reviews. When you read the one-star reviews, you'll see the things that anger people. You'll see the things that make them go to, and those are the landmines in writing. You want to stay away from those.
Yes, that's true. But do you think those negative reviews make you better too, or it down you?
It can't be a good feeling to get a negative review, but if the information, if after you calm down and you looked at it objectively, if the information is good and valid, then you take it to heart. Sometimes people do and say hateful things out of for one reason or other. They might something you said in the book might have gone against their political leanings or what they found to be socially acceptable, and they might just want to lash out at you. You know, in those situations, there's really nothing you can do about it. You have to live in your truth, and so you have to, you know, write what you believe and what you want to see. That's why, you know, first and foremost, I'm my harshest critic. My books have to satisfy me. If at the end of the day I'm satisfied with what I produce, then what somebody else says is just an opinion, unless it's something that's factual in regards to a technical error that I've made.
So, as one of the great indie writer, what is your motivation for those aspiring writers out there that they are have a second thought to publish their books?
Get out there and do it. Once you write a book, holding your own work in your hands is one of the most amazing feelings that you ever feel. It's a sense of completion. It's sense of achievement. And I'm an introvert, and so rarely do I get a chance to tell my side of the story with anything because I usually I'm very once of all first of all I'm a very good listener, and secondly I'm reluctant to interrupt people. So a book, a novel, is an opportunity to tell your side of the story or to tell your story from beginning to end without being interrupted. That's a beautiful thing. So go take I take that approach with it, and I get to have every little minor thought that I have and extrapolate it out to its full extent to convey exactly to the reader exactly what I mean so that nothing could be misconstrued, nothing could be taken out of context. Everything is right there laid out for you, and you either like it or you don't.
So, Mr. Burnett, give us five adjectives of a good novel.
Wow. So, five objectives of a good novel. A good novel, number one, should entertain you. Number two, it should educate you. Number three, it should probably challenge your beliefs. Number four, it probably should confirm your beliefs. And number five, it should make you want to read it again.
Wow. That's really a good novel, like your Sapiens trilogy.
Yes.
That'd be awesome. So, what else you can say about Sapien Days of Deception?
Sapien Days of Deception is action packed. Like I said, it's a thrill ride from beginning to end. There's never a dull moment in this book. You will absolutely love the Bastillions. You will love the way the book concludes, and it will leave you champing at the bit to get this because you absolutely have to know what happens next. Sapien Days of Deception.
Yes. How do you conceive the names of the solar systems or the planet inside your mind? How you do that?
Well, so there the planets are, say for instance, Alkebulan is the first planet, and that's the closest to the sun, and that planet consists of what we would call Africa on people who would be Africans on our planet, and it makes sense because that planet is closest to the sun. Alkebulan is the endonym for Africa. Africa is the exonym. Alkebulan is the endonym. So that's what it was called before it was named by other people. So that I have that planet, and then the it really goes from that then to Akkadian Arabu, which would be like Persia, Iran, Iraq, you know, there. Then the third planet would be America, which would be consisting of Native Americans. The fourth planet is Europa. Fifth would be India. No, fourth is India. The fifth is Europa. Then Neutralia, which is one of the neutral planets. That's why it's called Neutralia. Then Hades, and then the ninth planet is called Planet Albin, and that consists totally of albino people. So it's separated by races and ethnicities throughout the whole entire solar system. And each planet, you pretty much have to have permission from somebody who lives on the planet, one of the indigenous people, to come to the planet, unless it's Planet Hades or Planet Neutralia, which are the two neutral ones.
Oh wow, sounds interesting. All the planets are the same in one solar system, right?
Yes.
So when you're creating those fantasy, it does not come to your mind. Do you think this one of the flows that okay, like our solar system, Earth only is the living things that we can live, right? So
Yes.
how did you make the story that think that all these planets can live outside beyond the sun?
So this is one of those situations where in sci-fi, it's soft sci-fi because it's
Yes.
not hard sci-fi. You have to suspend your reality or your expectations of reality on this one because there's no way that you can have 9 life-sustaining planets in one solar system. Probably couldn't have that many in a galaxy. For the sake of the story, I made it so. Now, if it would depend on the levels of the planets, because they they don't have to be linear. The Earth and the planet, well, let's see, Europa and India don't have to exist on the same plane. One could be lower, one could be higher, and
Yes.
so theoretically, they could all be in the same zone of space and just be separated by a little bit of from, let's say, maybe the distance from the Earth to the Moon
Yes.
between each one of them, which would make them all inhabitable. Now we have to work with gravitational pulls and stuff like that, and it just gets complicated behind beyond that. So I just chose to, just in that, just suspend reality for that, for the sake of that, because I could have made it, you know, all in one galaxy or something like that. But you start getting into light speed numbers and stuff like that, and then it just gets overly complicated. So that's one of those things where, okay, we'll just have to accept, all right, everybody in the same solar system is, you know, able to live on life sustaining planets.
Very well said, Mr. Burnett. Mulati, where do you get the name?
So Mulati Soldat. Mulati it comes from the word mulatto. That's what it is. He's of mixed race in a solar system where that's very much frowned upon. So as a result, that's the name he was given. And soldat is Afrikaans for soldier. So common, and his Mulati Soldat's father, who he has never met, was a member of the notorious 144 from planet Alkebulan, which is the greatest fighting force in the solar system. And his mother was of Norse descent, from planet Europa. So it was a forbidden love affair that produced him. He was, as a result, was raised in the orphanage, but that's where his name came from, mulatto, which I've changed to Mulati for Mulati Soldat.
Wow, interesting, Mr. Burnett. So, where do people buy your books?
All of my books can be purchased on Amazon, and that's where if you go through and just search T.O. Burnett, my books, all three of them will come up. Soon to be 4 books will come up, and you see what I've done. You'll see my entire Sapien series.
Yes. So Mr. Burnett is planning to have a prequel, so let's support him because if you support our writers like him, will be better and better and better.
Absolutely. Please
Yes.
do.
Yes. And one more question, Mr. Burnett, or more question. Corruption and deceit. How did you put in the story?
Well, the corruption and came from the politicians. The Supreme Chancellor, the Supreme Council leader, Chancellor Aldrich, is a person who is not to be trusted, to put it mildly. Um, the deception happens with one of the gangs, one of the prominent gangs featured in the book called the DOD, the Debauchers of Death. And they have a leader who is a hothead, so to speak, or a warrior by the name of Rakuro Onishi. And he faces some obstacles with his gang, and in so doing, is met with a lot of deception. Whether he's the one who is deceiving or is being deceived remains to be seen. They'll have to read it for that.
Yes. Spoiler alert, people.
That's right. That's right.
So let's talk about the villain. What a great objectives that you can give to the villain.
Okay, so the MacGuffin for um, Chancellor Aldrich is that he wanted peace throughout the solar system, but his methods of doing so were misguided. So he wanted to, disarm the entire solar system. It was a lawless solar system. He wanted to take everybody's weapons and only arm the Mayhem Marauders who fall under his command. The problem with that is the Mayhem Marauders, before they structured and became the enforcers for the Supreme Council. So Supreme Council were one of the most vicious gangs in the solar system, and they couldn't be trusted. And so nobody in the system would trust them to be the only ones to be in charge. And plus, that gang, the Mayhem Marauders, is all from from planet Europa, and it was not a mixed gang. It was all people who were of European descent, to the exclusion of everyone else. So that wasn't going to fly.
Yes, who influenced you in writing the villain?
Ah, the the villain. I would say, if anything, the villain was influenced. What influenced my mind, if I had to dig into my subconscious, would probably be some American presidents in the way he carries himself, not any particular presidents, because he's a gentleman personally. He's just a tyrant when it comes to um, the way he lays out the law and the way he enforces the law. And so, very personable individual, very charismatic, um, and handsome guy. But in the end, he has some ways that are not very nice, and and he does some evil things. So if you can think of any of the world leaders who fit that bill, then you have Chancellor Stephen Aldrich.
Yes, sounds interesting. So, Sapien, Days of Deception, best description.
Yes. Best description. Days of Deception is exactly what it says. Um, a lot of that going on from beginning to end. No one is to be trusted in the book.
Oh, that sounds interesting, Mr. Burnett. So, once again, invite our readers or listeners to buy your books.
Yes, please go to Amazon to buy my books. Search T.O. Burnett, or you can search Sapien Dawn of Oblivion, Sapien Days of Deception, or Sapien Then There Was Darkness. You can also follow me on Twitter at Arthur T.O. Burnett. Um, you know, Send me a friend request. I pretty much, if you don't have any crazy things on your timeline, I accept you and we'll interact. And I'll be happy to have you.
Yes, that's true. So, once again, people out there, let's support Mr. Theo Burnett because Sapiens trilogy is one of a kind, phenomenal, as they said. so,
Absolutely.
so we need to make this to a series or a movie because it's something else.
That's right. Quentin Tarantino, are you listening? Let's go.
Yes. Is your favorite director Quentin Tarantino?
He was, yes. So yeah, he would. I think he would very much like Sapien because the dialogue and a lot of the things, the violence, are pretty much right down his alley. I like the way he delivers his movies. I like the way he does things. Yes. So he's one of my favorites.
That'd be awesome. Can you be my guest on my movie one on one and let's talk about movies?
That would be fantastic.
Yes. And returns, you're gonna, promote your books over there. My movie one is on the top 9 best movie podcasts on the planet.
Wow.
So let's talk about your movies that you want or movies that you like. Right, Mr. Burnett?
Oh, that would be great. That would be
That'd be
fantastic.
awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Burnett.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
Welcome, people. See you soon.